So today we are working with scale drawings and scale models. So as we're doing this, it's very similar to solving proportions, but more realistic, like what would happen in the real world. And so for one, a scale is like a proportion. And so yesterday when we were working on solving proportions, this is very similar, except for this has to do with what's the actual scale. So for example, when you're building a home and you have a blueprint of your home, I think that's what it's called, they have a smaller scale of what your house is going to look like. The most popular time that we see scale drawings and models is on maps. Anytime you pull up maps, then you are going to be seeing this scale. So if you notice, there's not a practice section. We're actually just going to do a few examples together, and at the bottom I'm actually just going to make up an example for you to get a C. But remember, if I write, you write. Okay, so the first one says a map shows a scale of 4 inches equals 6 miles. And so this is your scale. 4 inches equals 6 miles. And if you remember, how do we write ratios? You now write them as a fraction. And so you would write the scale the same. 4/6. Okay? And this is going to be inches. And this is going to be miles. It's really important that you know which is which. You can't get those confused. The distance between two places on a map is 4.25 inches. And then the question is, what is the actual distance? And so when we are solving scales, remember, scales are proportions. So step 1 is to set up a proportion using the given scale. And so we set up our first rate by using the given scale, but to set up a proportion, it needs to be equal to something. And in this case, it's 4.25 inches, which means it needs to be lined up with the inches. 4.25. And then we don't know what the actual distance is, which is the miles. That's a mystery. Now remember, it's really important to keep the same, if I can spell same, units across from each other. That is a key. You cannot mix up the units, okay? They've got to be the same. And so if you notice, we have inches, inches, and then we have miles and miles. Okay? So now looking at that, step 2 is going to be to cross multiply. Where you can. And we're going to do this one a little bit different. Okay? Last time when we were solving proportions, we set up an equation and solved it, but some of you always showed the shortcut. Today I'm going to do the shortcut. That way you get to see both. So the shortcut, I would find where you can cross multiply. For example, 4x, it can become 4x, but it can't be a real number. Okay? But right here, you can do 6 times 4.25. So I'm going to start like that. 6 times 4.25. 25.5. So now you have 25.5 from your cross multiplying. Okay, and then step 3 is to divide by the leftover number. Okay, so now after you have multiplied, you're going to divide by what's left. In this case, the 4 is left. So you're going to divide by that 4. And so I have 25.5 divided by 4. 6.375. X equals 6.375. And the last step is super important, and that is labeling it. On the test, if you forget to label, then you will get it wrong. So you cannot forget to label. And so it's 6.375 miles. Don't forget that. So if you notice, it's almost exactly the same as solving proportions. Now, here's another example. A scale model of a monument is 10 inches tall. Okay? 10 inches tall. The actual monument is 100 feet tall. So it wants to know, what is the scale? So if you look down here, it sets it up for you. The model height, which is 10 inches, over the actual height, which is 100 inches. And now you have to simplify. So you can just take off the zeros. And it's 1 inch is equal to, oh, this isn't inches, this is feet, is equal to 10 feet. 1 inch is equal to 10 feet. And that would be your scale. Okay, that's your scale. Now a scale factor is rewriting the scale using the same units in simplest form. We won't use this quite as often, but there's always that choice. Okay? So when we are doing this, for example, if you had 10 inches over 100 feet, okay, and you times the feet by 12, because there are 12 inches in a foot, and so in order to turn this into inches, oh, you can't even see, I'm sorry. So in order, you have 10 inches to 100 feet, and we want them in the same units, which means they either both need to be in feet, or they both need to be in inches. And in this case, it's easiest to do inches because there are 12 inches in 1 foot, and so you just have to multiply it by 12. And so it would equal 10 inches over 1,200 inches. And then if you simplified it, you would just take off the 0. And so it would be 1 inch for every 120 inches. And that would just be a scale factor, which is setting it up in the same units. Like I said, most of the time we'll be working with scales, not scale factors. But now you know how to do both. Okay? Today's notes weren't super long or super hard because really it's just solving proportions in a different way.